Alrighty, so let's talk about NYCFC. So, alongside with LAFC, there is no doubt that NYCFC is considered a heavy MLS contender, and I'm pretty sure if there is some odds right now, talk about who is the favorite of winning MLS Cup this season, it will be LAFC, and then NYCFC would follow by that. Well, actually, maybe Seattle might be a team that is just below LAFC, but NYCFC might be right up there in the top three in terms of the best odds of actually going to win MLS Cup this year. Now, last season, they finished with a record of 18-6-10, and they finished with 64 points, which was the best in the Eastern Conference, and they finished at the top of the Eastern Conference, although they were a long way off of LAFC in terms of the Supporter Shield race. I mean, as I mentioned last season, LAFC were just on a different planet, and they were well deserved of winning the Supporter Shield last year. They scored 63 goals, that is NYCFC, conceded only 42, and had a plus 21 goal differential. Last season summary, as I mentioned, they finished first in the Eastern Conference, knocked out in the second round, which is just such a shame for NYCFC, because last season I really thought that that was finally the year where they can really finally break this curse of not able to get past the second round. And as much as when you look at this NYCFC team for the past couple of years being one of the best team in the Eastern Conference, they still somehow have not got past the second round, and that it just seemed like it's just a curse for them right now. And I really thought last year was finally the year, but apparently TFC feel like that is not the case, and TFC basically beat them in that second round, which technically, in their case, it's probably like the first round, because they did get a bye in the first round, and they played their first game in the playoffs in the second round, and they suffer that upset against TFC. And they, of course, also got knocked out in the quarterfinal of the U.S. Open Cup. They got knocked out by Orlando City in a penalty kick shootout. Now, in terms of players that is coming in for this team, like the Red Bulls, they didn't really done much during this offseason in terms of adding player, although they did add some notable names. Keaton Parks, they got him on a permanent deal, which is great news for NYCFC. I mean, NYCFC fans was definitely praying the fact that they were going to get back Keaton Parks on a permanent deal, because he was such a vital part of their midfield last season, and they're able to get him on a permanent deal. They also got Gideon Zelinum, which should be some good depth in terms of that defense, and then also Gudminda Forarinsen, which I'm gonna get better in terms of pronouncing his names once I start watching a couple of NYCFC game. And like I said before, when you have these kind of names that it's hard to pronounce, usually I will get it right eventually when I do watch how broadcaster pronounce their names, and I basically just go with that in case, if that of course is how they pronounce. Now, the players, I know there's a couple of players that tends to sometimes say the broadcaster doesn't pronounce it right and they have like the right pronunciation, but most of those times they rarely actually do that, and you know, I just go with what the broadcaster pronounce, and that I'm pretty sure I will get his name right if I start watching a couple of more NYCFC. Well, I started to watch maybe for the first couple of NYCFC game, I eventually will get it right. And they also got Tyrone Gray as one of their acquisition. And like I said, they didn't get a lot of signing this offseason. And you know how just a moment ago where I talked about the Red Bulls not getting a lot of signing, and I talk about how I was very concerned about the Red Bulls with not a lot of signing. Well, is that the same case with NYCFC? The answer is no. And here's why. The reason why I'm not worried about NYCFC not getting a lot of players this offseason is that they don't really need to when you look at this squad, where it's basically one of the most stacked squad in the league. And that, you know, the other difference between them and the Red Bulls is that at least this offseason, they did not lose a lot of big and most important players on their squad. The only starters that they actually lost last season was Ben Sweat, which they didn't really lose him. They unfortunately was kind of victim of the expansion draft where Inter Miami decided to pick Ben Sweat, and you know, they did lose their starting left back, but it's okay because they have a couple of left back on their squad that can easily replace Ben Sweat. One of them is Roland Motorita. The other guy is Tony Rocha, who also played in that spot a couple of times last season. The other guys they did lose this off season that isn't well known because they didn't really play for this team very often. Daniel Bedoya, Abdi Mohammed, Jeff Cotwell, Ben Sweat, as I mentioned, Jesus Perez, Felician Dumas, and Ebenezer Ofori are the guys that is no longer with this team. But as I said, there's really only one starter that they lost last season, and with them already have a stacked squad and most of their players returning for this off season, I just don't really see how they need to really go out there and add a couple more pieces when they already have a very well-rounded team to potentially compete for MLS Cup this year. Now, in terms of goals scored for this team, I think it's going to be Abair and Matrita. I mean, both of these guys are the generator in terms of goal scoring, and this also is another beauty of NYCFC where, you know, when Abair actually went down with this team, goal scoring didn't really come down with this NYCFC team, even though Abair was one of their most important player and was the goal scorer, because they had Matrita that was scoring the goals, they had Maxi Morales that was scoring the goals, and they also had Tati Castellanos up there scoring the goals too. So in some way, I could actually add in both of those guys in terms of the goal scoring mark because all four of those guys can definitely generate the goals. But the reason why I put Abair and Matrita up there is because they generate most of the goals, and this, after all, is what I predict as the team main goal scorer. But you can definitely start to see kind of a pattern where they are just a very, very deep team. And, you know, if one of their players does get injured, you know, they can literally just go next man up, and that player that is going to be coming off the bench and replace a guy that is injured in the starting 11 can just be as good as the player that is unfortunately injured and will be out maybe for a couple of weeks. Now, in terms of playmaker for this team, obviously it's Maxi Morales. I believe last season he actually led the league in assists with 20. MVP, again, Maxi Morales. I mean, on good days, you could even say Maxi Morales is the best player in the league, and he definitely could be deserved the league MVP. In terms of surprise package, I'm actually going to go with Keaton Parks. I mean, there's so many names on this NYCFC team that I could easily put as a surprise package, but I'm just going to put Keaton Parks because they recently signed him on a permanent deal, and I really love the way that he was playing with NYCFC, and he was just an absolute unit in that midfield, which is why, as I said, NYCFC fan really hoped that this offseason they were able to secure him on a permanent deal, and they got exactly that. So expect him to continue to dominate in the midfield and absolutely boss that. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised a lot of opponent will have a lot of nightmare trying to contain him. Now, what I like about this NYCFC team, what I like about this NYCFC team is that, again, they are one, if not the most well-rounded squad in MLS right now. They're too deep pretty much in every single position, which means that if one of their starters went down, as I said, next man up, the next player comes up would just do as good as the player that is injured, which is why, also the reason why I think this team should make a deep playoff or should be contending for MLS Cup, and they probably could even compete for Supporter Shield this year and maybe even go toe-to-toe with LAFC for that spot. Now, the reason why I'm kind of hesitate the fact that they could potentially compete for MLS Cup this year is, as I mentioned before, the curse that they have with not getting into the second round. And that's really the big question that I put with this team, with the fact that can they finally get past the second round of the playoffs? Like, all the pieces are there for them to go into a deep playoff run, but the thing is, you know, can they finally do it this season? Can they, you know, I'm pretty sure in every NYCFC fan's mind, you know, the regular season, they're not really going to, well, they're going to pay attention to the team, but they're not really going to just really get excited the fact that this team, of course, wins Supporters Shield or get first again in the Eastern Conference, because right now in their mind they want to get past the second round of the playoffs. I mean, it's been just a frustration that I'm pretty sure their hated neighbor, the Red Bulls, have been dealing with so many years, and it seemed like that kind of disease has infected the other New York team right now. And you know, is this finally the season where that infection that they got from the Red Bulls and that curse that they've been having of not getting past the second round and make it to the conference final for the very first time is finally going to go away? Well, I guess we'll kind of find out in 6 months' time. And again, I really don't think this team, like this team right now, this year, the expectation is really at an all-time high. And I know the expectation might be kind of unfairly put on the new manager for NYCFC, which, God forbid, I actually literally forgot what his name was, but he is the manager that just comes from Celtic. And as I mentioned when I made the announcement, you know, he's going to work with a very similar squad that is, well, in terms of quality wise, he's going to work with a very similar squad that he had when he was with Celtic, and he was able to win them the Scottish Premiership. But let me see, in terms of manager, for whatever reason they still said it's Dominic Torrent. Oh, Ronnie Delia, that's his name. That is the current manager for NYCFC. So I know the expectation of MLS Cup or bust is a huge kind of expectation for a first-year coach, but when you have a squad that is no doubt the best squad, well, one of the best squad in the league, there's no doubt that you have to go deep into the playoffs, and you have to at least get to MLS Cup, and anything but that is going to be a big failure to this team, and anything but that is just going to be another year of talented kind of squad just wasted because of the fact that they choked in the playoffs. So yeah, we shall see whether or not if they can finally get past that voodoo of a second round that they haven't been done in their franchise history and get to the conference final in a couple of months. But until then, I definitely will enjoy seeing this team play and seeing this team just really potentially go toe-to-toe with LAFC for that Supporters Shield spot. But either way, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. If you're an NYCFC fan, what do you think about the offseason acquisition and the players that you lost this offseason? Goal scorer, playmaker, MVP, and surprise package, who do you think it's going to be? And what do you like about this team? And what is the one big question, which, again, I'm pretty sure every NYCFC fans are going to ask, can this team finally not choke in the playoffs for the 1 millionth time? But either way, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.